I stumbled upon 4 terrifying true scary stories that will haunt your dreams forever. I never should have opened that door. That thought clung to me like a dense fog the moment I stepped inside. Normal life had surrounded me, the humdrum of my daily routine, waking up, coffee brewing, and the comforting buzz of my phone. Then everything shattered. I was drawn in, against my better judgment, to that door. The air turned cold, like fingers of ice creeping down my spine. The room beyond wasn't just dark, it felt alive. Shadows flickered and twisted, whispering secrets I wasn't meant to hear. My heart raced. I could almost taste the fear, metallic and bitter, on my tongue. I sensed something lurking in the corners, breathing in time with my own ragged breaths. I felt the chill seep into my bones as the silence deepened, almost taunting me, teasing the edges of my sanity. Then came the noises, a soft rustle, like fabric brushing against itself, just beyond my vision. I froze, my eyes straining against the blackness. A chair skated across the floor, an eerie sound that echoed through the stillness. Panic tightened my chest. What kind of room was this? My mind raced, desperately trying to reason with the impossible. I wished I could retreat, but my feet were anchored to the ground, held captive by an unseen force. I turned to leave, but the door slammed shut with a deafening bang, forcing the air from my lungs. My heart pounded wildly, drowning out all rational thought. I was never meant to be here. The whispers grew louder, forming a chorus of voices that chained me to my spot. I felt fingers brush against my neck, a cold, clammy grip, and then I saw it. A figure, half-formed in the shadows, waiting. Its eyes glinted like shards of glass, hungry and cold. I stumbled backward, my scream caught in my throat, a silent plea for escape that never came. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The figure stepped forward, its form distorting as it moved, the shadows clinging to it like a miasma. I felt an unspeakable dread twist my stomach as its mouth opened wide, revealing a darkness deeper than the room itself. From it came a sound, not quite a scream, but a guttural wail that resonated in my very bones. The air thickened with despair, and I reflexively raised my hands as if to shield myself from whatever horror was about to be unleashed. Every fiber of my being screamed to run, but the weight of dread pinned me in place. The figure lunged, a blur of shadow and ice-cold malice. I stumbled sideways, colliding with the wall, desperate to find purchase on anything solid. My fingers clawed at the peeling wallpaper, the thin veneer of normalcy fading like a memory. Suddenly, the room warped, stretching and twisting as if the very foundation of reality was coming undone. Whispers clawed at my ears, intertwining with the wail, a cacophony of voices echoing through the void. They spoke my name, soft and insistent, 1,000 voices crawling beneath my skin. They promised secrets and truths, urging me to listen. I pressed my palms against my ears, trying to drown them out, yet they seeped through, merging with my thoughts like poison. In a burst of adrenaline, I lunged toward the door, but it morphed into a solid wall, unforgiving and impassable, like the tomb I was trapped in. The shadows danced manically, casting grotesque shapes that darted from one corner to the next. I felt the temperature plummet further, my breath came out in sharp bursts visible in the frigid air. I dared a glance back at the figure, now advancing slowly, almost leisurely. Its eyes glimmered with anticipation, hungry for my fear. Had it been waiting for me all along? I realized in that moment, this was no simple haunting. It was an embodiment of the darkness I had unknowingly summoned. Panic surged again, and I twisted away, desperate to gather myself. But then, without warning, I caught sight of something glinting on the floor, a small, rusted key, half buried beneath the dust. Instinct screamed at me to grab at the key to my salvation or perhaps another layer of this nightmare. I lunged toward it, fingers grasping at the iron coldness, feeling the chill run through me. As my hand clutched the key, the wailing intensified, a shriek of rage and despair that reverberated through the room, as if the very walls were crying out. I stood frozen, key in hand, as the figure shrieked, choking on its own fury. In that split second, the room felt like it was closing in, the shadows warping even more wildly, threatening to engulf me, and then, a silence far worse than the wailing engulfed the space. The figure paused, its twisted features shifting into a semblance of curiosity. There was a moment of fragile heartbeat in time where I wondered if I had somehow broken the spell, the oppressive weight lifting, just slightly, but as I breathed out the tiniest sigh of relief, the air shifted again, twisting into something dark and sharp. A creeping realization sunk in: the key wasn't for the door, it was for something deeper, more sinister. Through the silence came a rumble, like the shifting of the earth itself. And then, from the depths of the shadows, more figures began to emerge, their forms undulating and writhing as they opened their mouths in unison, revealing a singular haunting echo. Join us. I stumbled back again, tripping over my own feet, desperate to escape the impending wave of darkness. The shadows lunged, a dark tide ready to sweep me under. And just as I felt the icy breath on my neck, a door appeared, unlike the last. This one gaped open, a flickering light spilling from within, beckoning me closer. Instinct whispered to run, to flee, but I hesitated, heart caught in the clutches of uncertainty. And as my feet remained rooted to the spot, the first tendril of shadow slipped past me, curling around my ankle, sharp and biting, dragging me back toward the darkness. With a gasp, I realized I wasn't just trapped in a room, I was caught in a twisted web of my own making. As the tendrils tightened, I could barely choke out a single thought: leave or be consumed. Then everything went black. Consciousness returned like a fractured glass, jagged and painful. My senses fought for dominance, fragments of reality slipping through the cracks like sand. I was no longer pressed against the wall, but suspended in a void. The sensation was disorienting, the cold grasp of dread clinging to me like a shroud. I opened my eyes or attempted to, but the darkness surrounded me like a thick fog, obscuring everything. Panic washed over me anew as I inhaled, the air stale and oppressive. A gut-wrenching realization sunk in: I wasn't just lost in darkness, I was ensnared in the web of shadows, their chilling whispers mingling in an eerie symphony. "Help us," a voice hummed softly, slithering into my mind. It was seductive yet grotesque, each word wrapping around me like cold chains. The contours of the void began to pulse, rhythmically, almost alive. I felt something shift beneath me, brushing against my skin, a texture like slime sliding over flesh. Fragments of sound began to coalesce into recognizable shapes: a child's laughter, a woman weeping, and the low growl of something primal and hungry. My heart thumped in discordant rhythm, mind racing to find a thread to pull me back to safety. But safety had become a hallucination, a cruel joke played by whatever had bound me here. In the stifling silence, I caught a glimpse of flickering light, a fleeting ember igniting hope before snuffing it out. My heart surged with the instinctual need to reach it. I twisted, struggling against the unseen bindings, forcing my limbs to move, to claw at the inky blackness until there it was again. The light flickered alive, a pulse against the void. With every ounce of strength, I propelled myself toward it, fighting against the sinister tendrils that sought to drag me back. As I neared, the light expanded, revealing the contours of a cellar, walls coated in dried blood and mildew. Jagged stones protruded from the ground, sharp like teeth awaiting the tender flesh of unwary souls. I plunged into the flickering light, gasping as the shadows clawed at my heels. The candles illuminated a circle etched into the stone, symbols swirling and twisting, a sigil, familiar yet terrifying. My memories surged: a book, an incantation I had whispered in curiosity, unaware of the malevolence lying dormant in the words. I scrambled to my feet, the dread settling like a heavy cloak pressed against my shoulders. I was not alone. As if sensing my awareness, the figures emerged from the shadows. They were the damned, wretched visages twisted in eternal torment, their mouths forming silent screams. Each soul bore the marks of eternal anguish, trapped in this liminal space between life and dark oblivion. "Join us," they intoned, their voices a chorus of despair, ethereal and chilling, filled with suffering that resonated within me. Their eyes, voids of unearthly sorrow, locked onto mine, pulling at the very essence of my being. I staggered back, the sigil glowing ominously beneath my feet, pulsating as if it were alive, eager to claim me as one of its own. Through the writhing horror that surrounded me, I caught sight of the rusted key hanging gleamingly from my trembling fingers, the cold iron now radiating heat, as though the ancient metal recognized the desecration wrought by its presence here. I glanced from the key to the sigil, then back to the figures, the realization dawning whatever power this key held, it could either undo this nightmarish trap or amplify the shadows. As if sensing my decision, the figures surged forward, stretching out their fingers, and I felt the rush of despair wash over me. My breath caught in my throat. The sigil beneath me flared to life, casting grotesque shadows upon the walls, images circling like a tempest. Everything seemed to spiral out of control. Instinct screamed that whatever choice lay ahead would seal my fate. That I could feel the shadows pulse, eager to ensnare their next victim, while the urge to plunge into the key's mystery thrummed at the back of my mind. In the end, it was a question not just of survival but of sacrifice. Before I could linger on the weight of the decision, the ground shuddered violently beneath me, the sigil cracking as a dark fissure split open, revealing a churning void. The damnation of the figures reached a fever pitch, their eyes blazing with unending torment. In that moment, reality fractured once more, shadows imploding around me, and the void opened its maw to swallow all light. My instincts roared to flee, but the choice became a cruel paradox: leap into the abyss with the hope of freedom or remain trapped in this twisted realm of suffering, forever. With no more time to ponder, I chose. I lunged toward the mouth of darkness, the figures shrieking in fury as I hurled the key into the void. And then everything went black again. The darkness enveloped me like a thick, viscous fluid, pressing against my skin and seeping into my very thoughts. I fell, spiraling downward through a chasm that felt infinite. Silence consumed me, but the suffocating void was more than stillness. It was an anticipation that coiled around my limbs, a prelude to something darker. It felt as though time drifted apart, past and present unraveling in an unholy dance. Whispers crept in, threading through my mind in a disjointed melody of despair. I heard snippets of old lullabies, familiar yet twisting, sung by voices both gentle and sinister. It was a cacophony of those who had succumbed to fear, those who had fluttered too close to the flame of that wretched sigil. Then, abruptly, the sensation of falling ceased. I crashed onto a surface that felt foreign and unyielding, a place rich with the metallic taste of regret. As I sat up, gasping for breath, the shadows coalesced around me, opaque tendrils curling and coiling as if alive, their caresses both beckoning and forbidding. I was no longer in the cellar, I had been deposited elsewhere. A flickering light danced beyond, a will-o'-the-wisp teasing me into motion. With each step toward the light, I was struck by grotesque images that swirled in the corners of my vision, shards of broken mirrors that reflected memories not my own, faces twisted in agony and terror that faded before I could comprehend them. Suddenly, laughter erupted, piercing through the stillness, echoing from the shadows behind me. A laugh imbued with malice, a declaration of amusement at my plight. "Welcome." It sang, the words stretching out like a cat's yawn, laced with mocking intent. I turned, dread pooling in my stomach. The shadows flickered, and from it stepped a figure, indistinct yet solid, its presence unnaturally imposing. Features gradually sharpened, a woman with hollow eyes and a grin that seemed carved from bone, her hair curling like tendrils of smoke around her face. "Are you lost?" she taunted, her voice weaving through the air like poison. "So many have been before you, yet they never leave, do they?" Each syllable dripped with the weight of the innumerable souls that had tread this path, each echoing their despair into the eternity of darkness. I don't belong here. I seek the light," I stammered, even as uncertainty coiled tighter around my heart. She took a step closer, the shadows behind her shifting restlessly, as if yearning to break free. "Light?" she echoed, mocking me with each syllable. What light remains ever tainted by shadows? You chose to jump into a maw that feasts on hopes. Do you think the key will save you? The key. My fingers instinctively sought its familiar chill in my pocket, but it was gone. Panic surged like a tidal wave, drowning out reason. The figure leaned forward, eyes gleaming with wicked delight, revealing rows of sharp, yellowed teeth. They will come, she hissed ominously. They always do. The ones who wish to tangle with fate, with me. Her form dissolved into smoke, swirling grotesquely until I was enveloped by the shadows again. In that suffocating embrace, the air shifted, and I felt a stirring presence, an energy scrambling toward me. I was no longer alone, unseen figures drew near, their breath icy as it brushed against my skin. Realization crystallized, the shadows were sentient, feeding off anguish, desiring to incorporate me into their eternal torment. A wailing rose from the depths, a chorus of mournful cries rising and falling like the tide. They were souls, anguished and tormented, rising from the darkest corners of my fears. I could see their faces emerging, twisted with grief, pleading, taunting, each expression a silent story of how they too had sought the light. Among them was a child, small, bright-eyed, and grinning, an uncanny glow emanating from her form, stark against the void. "Help us!" she sang, her innocence a contrast that drowned out the despair. "You can help us all. Free us." But in the child's plea, I detected something darker, a deep-seated manipulation lurking beneath her facade. I stumbled back. Heart racing. Was this another trick, a lure to draw me deeper into despair? The figures advanced, shadows closing around me, and I knew the truth was buried beneath layers of deceit and longing. The tension stretched unbearably as I turned to flee, desperate to escape the encroachment of the shadows. Just as I began to run, the ground cracked beneath me, the earth trembling as another fissure opened to reveal the pulsating darkness below. From it, grotesque arms reached upward, clawing for me, and a chorus of voices crescendoed into a maddening din, their collective wailing resonating through the dark. Suddenly, the child stepped forward, her gaze locking onto mine. "You have one choice," she said, her voice now ominously serene amidst the chaos. "Stay with us or break the cycle." And in that split second, the glowing sigil flared to life once more in my memories, an invitation and a warning, urging me to understand the choice that loomed before me. I realized, too late, that whatever power this darkness wielded, the choice to resist may come at a cost unimaginable, but before I could decide, her tiny hand shot out, gripping the edge of the gaping fissure, pulling my gaze toward it. I felt the shadows swirl, drawing my essence apart, the arms reaching further, desperate to claim me. With panic clawing at my chest, the scream escaped my lips as I was drawn toward the rift, the abyss calling forth with a promise of dark liberation, and as the darkness consumed me once more, I was left wondering whose plea had truly been genuine and whether I would emerge the savior, or the puppet. The darkness pressed in from all sides, an oppressive weight that suffocated thought and crushed hope beneath its remorseless heel. My body teetered on the brink of the fissure, my heart hammering wildly as the chilling reality of my situation unfurled before me. Those clawing shadows whispered my name, a sinister lullaby pulling me closer to the brink, ready to plunge me into their malevolent depths. In one last desperate push against the inevitable, I wrenched my gaze away from the child's haunting visage. "Free us!" The chorus erupted again, 100 voices merging into one anguished wail. It was a siren's call twisting my very spirit, tugging me toward peril like a moth to a voracious flame. Suddenly, an unseen force shifted, slamming into me like a tidal wave. I was propelled backward, tumbling away from the gaping maw of darkness. The shadows recoiled momentarily in surprise, their relentless grasp slackening just enough for me to scramble away on my hands and knees. The momentary reprieve allowed a glimmer of clarity to seep through the dread. As I gasped for air, pulling it into my lungs like it was the first in ages, I now saw the larger expanse of the realm cloaked in shadow. Shapes danced at the periphery of my vision, figures locked in eternal agony, reaching out with gnarled hands that merged with the darkness. Each of their hollow eyes beckoned with the same fervor as the child's haunting Gazean invitation, a demand. "Run," I croaked, pushing myself to my feet. The walls of the cavernous void seemed to thrum with a pulse, in synchrony with the dark symphony that tore at my sanity. I stumbled forward, where that flickering light had beckoned me moments ago, hoping it was not merely another illusion. As I sprinted, I could feel echoes of their despair breaking into my mind. They clamored for recognition, for release, pouring their stories into me like molten iron, scalding and unforgiving. I shut my eyes tight against the onslaught of their memories, each one a grotesque trove of sorrow and regret, binding me further in, but something else emerged amidst the chaos, a faint glow slicing through the oppressive darkness, vibrant and pulsing as if alive. The closer I drew, the more it illuminated the space around me, unveiling a grotesque banquet stretching infinitely toward the horizon. It was an altar of despair, adorned with transmuted remnants of those who had come before. Their faces melded into grotesque masks, twisted in expressions of horror, forever trapped in their last moments. What is this? I gasped, horror clawing at my throat. The light flared violently, momentarily blinding me. When I blinked away the brilliance, I found myself at the table, me skin crawling as realization dawned. Each setting had been designed for the souls of the damned, curated to ensnare the lost and invite them into a terrifying banquet of nightmares. Is this how it ends? I whispered, trembling against the chilling realization that I was meant to partake in this feast, the final offering of my humanity. A pull began to weave around my heart, inviting me to take a seat among them, to join in their tragedy, to surrender to despair. Then, the child's voice rang out amidst the stillness, piercing through the lurking dread. "You don't have to," she called. "They want to consume you. And once they eat, you will become part of the feast. You must resist." I looked back to see her standing at the edge of the banquet, her once luminous form dulled, her eyes wide with urgency. In that moment, she transformed, inhabited by the spirits that swirled around, her small hands now reaching out from the depths of their grasp. Her small, innocent voice straining against the vile currents that sought to devour her, her tiny body flickering like a dying flame. "Listen carefully," she shouted, desperation etched in her features. "Find the sigil. It holds the power to banish the shadows." "Where?" My voice trembled, the ground beneath my feet quaking as I felt the dark force rally against her words. They stirred, angry and vengeful, rising in a clamor to silence her wisdom. "The sigil is here," she cried, her voice breaking, enveloped within the cacophony of sorrow and rage. "You must choose. You must make." A shadow lunged from the banquet's edge, snatching the child in a brutal grasp. Her eyes widened in shock as she screamed, the sound piercing through my heart with the force of an arrow. In an instant, she was pulled backward, disappearing into the thrumming void as all the figures surged toward me, their intentions now clear: devour me whole. I stumbled away from the altar, panic rising with the cacophony of their cries. With every step, I felt the shadows reach out, their desperation crawling over my skin, and in the frenzy the whispers, the stories, the haunting memories, they twisted together, forming a chant. A dark hymn woven tightly around me, flesh to the feast. Join us, be one of us. Driven by terror, I raced for the luminous glow that still throbbed nearby, desperate to unearth the sigil that could shatter this dark banquet. But the shadows coiled tighter, dragging me back to the altar, their voices ravenous, excited, filling the air with their grotesque desire. "Join us. Join us." Just as I broke through their grasp, I stumbled, falling to my knees in front of the blinding light. My heart raced with the urgency of a resurrection, and as I reached out into the brilliance, I felt a surge of power. The sigil. The glow cloaked me, promising salvation, yet whispered doubts gnawed at the edges of my consciousness. "Flesh of the lost will be our feast." I grasped the sigil tightly, its power vibrating through me like electricity, and in that moment of desperate clarity, I realized the weight of my choice. I could either banish them or join them, and as I hovered on the edge of decision, the shadows surged around me, more voracious than ever, clamoring for their flesh, aching to consume me before I could comprehend the weight of my decision. A horrifying truth split through my mind, a spiraling echo of dread. The shadows had been collecting souls, feeding on their despair, and as I held the sigil, I was not merely a savior but a prospective banquet guest. Was the sigil powerful enough to obliterate them? Or would it bind me to their fate forever? And just when I thought a choice lingered ahead, the ground trembled beneath me, opening wide with a deafening crack. I barely had time to scream as I plummeted into the depths, lost once more in the abyss, the feast clawing desperately at my heels. The darkness swallowed me whole, and as I spiraled downward, their chilling laughter echoed in my ears, "One of us, one of us." I was jolted awake not to the gentle embrace of dawn, but to the suffocating pressure of absolute darkness. My heart pounded in a frenzied rhythm, clawing at my throat as shivers raced down my spine. I was no longer hurtling through that infinite void, but instead, lying on a cold, hard surface surrounded by an overwhelming silence that felt more stifling than the terror I had just escaped. Tentatively, I pushed myself up, glancing around. The last echoes of laughter haunted my senses, fading but still palpable, like smoke filtering through the cracks of my mind. The dim light flickered above, revealing my surroundings, a decrepit room, damp and crumbling, with walls that seemed to pulse, as if they held a heartbeat of their own. Every vague shadow took shape as I strained to peer into the darkness, twisting and distorting as they merged with the unsettling stillness. A rotting wooden door sagged on rusting hinges, creaking ominously with every minute shift of the air. Then, out of the depths of that inky blackness, I heard Ida's soft sobbing, echoing through the stillness, weak yet laced with an underlying dread that took root in my gut. "Help, please," the voice quivered, a broken plea that pulled at the deepest wells of my empathy. It beckoned me, promising connection amid the isolation of despair. I stumbled toward the sound, wiping the sweat from my brow as I took hesitant steps closer. As I reached the door, the sobbing grew louder, layered with raw suffering, a melody woven of pain. I grasped the handle, tremors coursing through my fingers as I turned it, the door creaking open to reveal a dark corridor, illuminated only by a faint glow cast from dim sconces. The light shimmered like an ethereal serpent slithering through eternity. I stepped into the corridor, heart racing. The walls breathed around me, and each breath carried the weight of history soaked in grief. "Who's there?" I called, the sound of my own voice feeling oddly foreign in the suffocating quiet. The sobbing ceased, replaced by a disembodied whisper that echoed through the passage. "Help us," it pleaded, layered with the cries of many spirits entwined in despair, crying out from the veil separating worlds. It ignited an awareness deep within. This was no ordinary place. Each step I took felt like an intrusion, disturbing the restless souls trapped among these shadows. As I moved deeper, the dim light flickered in anticipation, drawing me closer to the source of their haunting lament. I felt eyes watching me, countless eyes stoking the fire of an unquenchable hunger for liberation intricately tied to my own fate. I could taste the acrid tang of fear on my tongue, the palpable tension coiling tighter around me. "Help us!" cried another voice, this one sharper, edged with desperation and rage. "They take us, and we cannot leave." I hesitated. A wave of icy dread washed over me, countering the pull of empathy threatening my resolve. "Who takes you?" I shouted, my voice quivering against the wild cadence of shadows that swirled around me, the whispers growing louder, almost frantic. "The feast," they chorused, their words colliding like thunder, horrific and awe-inspiring. "We are lost. Do not join us." Suddenly, visions erupted in my mind, snapshots of those tormented souls I'd glimpsed in my previous descent. They clawed helplessly at the remnants of their humanity, eyes glassy with despair. Their bodies, void of life yet reanimated by shadow, poured through the cracks of my consciousness, and then a memory hit like a tidal wave. The child's image flooded back, her innocent face warped in terror, urging me to resist. The sigil. The sigil. The thought echoed as clarity sparked in the haze of impending madness. I had to find it, but darkness loomed, hungry and insatiable. The sobbing changed, softening into laughter, unsettling and ghoulish, a cacophony of torment as a grotesque ghostly figure emerged from the gloom. It was a skeletal apparition draped in a tattered gown that fluttered like shadows caught in a storm. "Why fight it?" it jeered, voice a raspy whisper that sent ice coursing through my veins. "Join us, become part of the feast. You won't feel pain anymore. You will be free." The eyes of the figure glimmered with a sinister allure against the dim light. This was the true overture of the banquet, a seduction clothed in tainted mercy. I staggered back, dread swallowing my sanity, feeling the weight of every soul entwined in its grasp. "Release us!" I shouted, summoning the last vestiges of courage. "Release?" It laughed darkly, a sound that vibrated with the marrow of despair. "You think that is your choice? You are already claimed, soul lost among the souls. Your flesh will adorn our table, just as all others." Another figure emerged from the waltz, a twisted visage of someone I once loved, trapped and writhing in agony, eyes pleading with mine. "Help me!" it roared, indistinguishable from the shadows that danced voraciously around the skeletal figure. I turned to flee, desire to survive ignited by sheer terror. But the corridor now twisted, expanding into a labyrinth of suffering. The walls closed in, uniting in a cacophony of pleas that pinned me in place, a relentless wave of sorrow cascading over me. Then I caught sight of the sigil glinting in the dim light at the corridor's end. It pulsated with power, drawing me forward, yet I could feel the shadows grasping, their chill wrapping around my ankles, anchoring me in a nightmarish embrace. "Join us!" they shrieked, the sound warming my bones with dread, ravenous for my flesh. I lurched forward, breathless and trembling as I reached for it. Just as my fingers brushed against its surface, the floor beneath me quaked violently. I screamed as dark tendrils snaked up my body, seeping into my skin. "No, no!" I wailed, fighting fiercely against their cold grip, but the shadows began to pull, dragging me back toward my long-lost tormentors. "Become one of us!" they cried, dragging me into the depths of their unending despair. But the sigil pulsed with heat, surging against my fingertips, beckoning me even as my body screamed in protest. Would this be my salvation, or was it merely another layer of deception weaving itself tightly around my very essence? And as I dangled between the realms of choice, the apparition leaned closer, eyes burning with delight. "It's too late for you, lost soul." The floor beneath me crumbled away, revealing an abyss brimming with distant screams, crawling hands, frantically reaching for me. And there, I glimpsed the child again, her visage fading as if she were being pulled into the maelstrom of darkness, lost to me once more, with the choice hanging heavily in my heart. Everything shifted, time, space, realisha. A single heartbeat echoed in the void of despair. "Choose!" they chanted, the shadows closing in, relishing my agonizing conflict. But before I could make a decision, a blinding light erupted from the sigil, washing over me in a torrent of brilliance, and as I attempted to scream, all I felt was the light overwhelming, obliterating, consuming me whole. And the last thing I heard as I surrendered to its blinding embrace was a chorus of laughter. The feast was far from over, and I was about to learn the most terrifying truth of all. The blinding light cradled me, a cacophony of laughter exploding in a spiral of sound that echoed through the fabric of space itself, a grotesque sweetness only dimly holding back the darkness. For a fleeting moment, I felt warmth seep into my very bones, igniting hope. Then, just as quickly, the light fractured, and I was plunged into suffocating obscurity once more. Gasping, I found myself sprawled on the cold stone floor of another chamber, disoriented and breathless. The laughter receded, replaced by a silence more oppressive than what I had just endured, as if the very air were pausing to witness my descent into madness. I pushed myself up, trembling, eyes darting through the murk. This room was different, larger, more expansive, with towering walls painted in a thick layer of grime. Flickering torches cast sinister shadows that danced along the rafters, grotesque shapes twisting in glee as they mimicked the despair I felt. In the center stood a long, worn table, its surface slick and gleaming under the shadowy light, cluttered with decrepit remnants of past feasts, bone fragments, dried blood, and brittle scraps of what once may have been. As I took a tentative step forward, the laughter swelled again, hauntingly familiar. It was the children's laughter, the same soft, melodic tones that had haunted my dreams, barely discernible beneath the roiling despair of the prior realm. They called to me from beyond the shadows, innocent yet laced with a mocking undertone, weaving through the air like tendrils searching for a way into my mind. I stumbled toward the table, revulsion clawing at my stomach. "What do you want from me?" I shouted, voice trembling in the cavernous emptiness. The laughter only crescendoed, taunting and chaotic, as if mocking my ignorance. I could feel their small fingers brushing against me, a sweeping memory of play. Pure joy turned venomous, and then, flickering at the edge of my vision, a figure emerged from the darkness. Dressed in ragged clothing that fluttered like matted feathers, it was a child no more than 5, with wide eyes that shone like pools of moonlight, but aflame with an unsettling gleam. It beckoned me closer, a smile splitting its face, too wide and too toothy, grotesque within the shadows. "Join us." It sang, voice dripping with mirth and malice, as it danced around the table. "They love you here. We can be together forever." The blood drained from my face as I realized I recognized this child not from dreams, but from the years of joy and innocence stolen away from me. "Sarah," I whispered, the name escaping my lips with a prayerful fervor. "What have they done to you?" The child's laughter twisted, morphing into a cacophony of giggles that wrapped around my mind, burdening me with their resonance. "It's wonderful here," she insisted, eyes glinting with something feral that clawed at my sanity. "You just need to let go, let go." As if they could rip my essence from me, devour it whole like a feast laid out before a ravenous horde. My stomach churned as realization dawned. This was the continuation of the banquet, a repast composed of the lost, the forgotten. But I wouldn't join them. "Not willingly, please, Sarah, I can save you. I will find a way." My words fell like stones into the depths of an ocean filled with hungry sharks, hardly a ripple made in the tempestuous laughter encircling me. The room shifted then, the floor trembling underfoot, shadows swirling with malignant energy as if the very walls of this hell were alive, eager to consume me. "You cannot save what is not here," Sarah shrieked, voice warping into something monstrous. "You belong to us now. You are one with the feast." Suddenly, she lunged forward, not as the sweet beggar for freedom but as a wraith wrapped in anguish, ripping through the space where light dared not tread. I pivoted, heart racing, as a swirl of figures emerged from the darkness, the lost children of this accursed realm, faces contorted in an unholy melange of joy and despair, their hands outstretched, mouths wide with manic glee. They mounted a collective chorus, chanting my name, weaving through the air like a snake seeking its prey. "Join us! Join us!" No longer was I paralyzed by fear, now it transformed into the fire of raw defiance stirring deep within my soul. I turned and dashed toward the far wall, feeling those icy fingers grazing my back, urging me to surrender to the banquet of the lost. But just as I collided with what seemed like the final barrier of my entrapment, a violent force exploded from the ground beneath my feet, rippling outward as a torrent of shadows surged forth, dragging the laughter outside into a throaty roar directed at me. "Choose! Choose!" they shrieked, their hands grasping, mounting a tide that wrestled against my resistive will. The world around me twisted as the child Sarah morphed back into the rotting figure I once encountered, a grotesque reminder of the horrors they promised, and in that maze of despair, lying before me, I glimpsed the sigil once more, now radiant in its brilliance, desperately illuminating the corners of my mind. It pulsated like a heart, it held the secrets of salvation. Summoning every fragment of strength that still clung to me, I reached forward, compelled by the hope it emanated. But just as I was about to grasp it, shadows whirled in a fury, rising high above, merging into a colossal figure that towered over me, a malevolent being with tendrils of darkness flowing from its body like smoke. Its voice slithered through the air, powerful and twisted. "Leave the path, soul seeker, and forfeit your claim," it whispered, tendrils reaching out, encircling my throat, squeezing and constricting until all that filled my lungs was panic and fear. With a final gasp, I clutched at the sigil, me only chance. Its energy exploded around me like a supernova, and as I was engulfed in brilliance, the presence of despair coiling around my throat abruptly vanished. But then, the joyous laughter returned, this time, clear and sharp, echoing along the now spiraling walls. "You will join us, inevitably. The darkness craves you as you crave it," and with that, I was pulled backward, my vision blurring, the array of twisted souls shifting once more, lost within the banquet of forever. The sigil flickered, the last glimmer of hope, as I sailed through layers of darkness, feeling the futility of resistance grip tightly around my heart. Just before vanishing into the inconceivable void, I saw Sarah's face merge into the abyss. "Join us, dear sister. We have been waiting with that sentence tracing the icy tendrils of despair threading around my mind. I plummeted into shadows deeper than horror could fathom, my scream swallowed whole in a cacophony of twisted laughter from the lost and the damned. The darkness finally gave way to an oppressive stillness, wrapping around me like a shroud, each breath echoing as I lay in a shadowy chamber that felt as if it had no end. I felt as if I were suspended in time, drawn from one realm into another, both suffocating and liberating. The weight of their laughter still clung to my mind, flaring into manic echoes, twisting through my thoughts like serpents entwining around a neck. Suddenly, the air shifted, a cold breeze caressing my skin, wrapping my senses tighter in its grip. I pushed myself up from the ground, feeling the cold stone kiss my palms like a bitter reminder of my surroundings. The chamber was larger than the previous one, suffused with low, flickering light cast from braziers lining the walls, illuminating grotesque murals depicting infernal banquets, the figures engaged in hideous revelry. Their eyes, hollow and dark, seemed to track my every movement, hungry and expectant. As I ventured further inside, the laughter intensified, mingled with agonizing wails that wrenched the fabric of my resolve. The memory of Sarah faded and morphed in my mind, her face now twisted with hunger, a reminder of all those I had lost to the wretched grasp of this place. I moved cautiously, acutely aware of a lingering presence edging closer, lurking just beyond the threshold of sight. Every shadow felt sentient, alive with the weight of despair, ready to seize me. Whispers rose like smoke, hissing tales of woe and loss that wormed their way into my ears, urging surrender. "You don't belong here, but we can make you one of us," a voice rasped. Deeper than despair a serpent curled around the truth I now dared not confront. My heart raced, the rhythm of panic amplifying the dread swelling within my chest. "No!" I cried, forcing my voice to submit to the raucous laughter that mounted and fell like waves, crashing against the shore of my sanity. "I will not join you." But my defiance fell flat amidst the growing tempest. Just then, a door creaked, the sound cutting through the auditory chaos as it swung open with an agonizing slowness. I hesitated, peering into the dim corridor beyond, where darkness stretched like a gaping maw. There, an ancient wooden chair sat in stark contrast to the cold stone that surrounded it, warm and inviting in a way that was deeply unnatural. I was drawn toward it, compelled by an unknown force, one that teased my mind with the promise of comfort and refuge. As I approached, the air grew heavier, wrapping around me like a lover's embrace, stifling and seductive. The chair beckoned, engraved with intricate sigils that flickered in and out of existence. I reached out, fingers trembling, a flash of blood red in my mind as a memory began to course through joyous laughter of children, the sound of boots crunching through leaves in autumn, a fleeting moment of pure light amidst claustrophobic shadows. But the laughter shifted, it belly laughed now, deep and mocking as each step I took seemed to deepen my entrapment. The faces contained within the murals shifted corresponding to my fear, eyes trailing my movements in an unsettling synchrony. They began to whisper, reaching out with hands elongated beyond reason, looking to pull me closer toward that inviting chair. "Sit with us, be one with us," they chanted, distortion dripping from their words like honey laced with poison. Drawn closer to the chair, I hesitated, heart thrumming like a war drum, an echo in the growing cacophony. "No!" I shouted again, but my voice was swallowed by the whispering mouths of the walls, which tightened their grip of yearning and madness around me. With everything inside me screaming to flee, I turned sharply, desperate to escape the siren's call, but the moment I did, the ground trembled beneath me. An earthquake of shadows erupted, a convulsion that rippled through the air as thick tendrils grasped for my ankles, the weight of the chamber pressing in as if it sought to bury me alive. The child's laughter rose again from unseen mouths, fissuring the labyrinth of darkness until it vibrated through my bones. "You cannot leave. You belong to the darkness, our eternal night." They shrieked, voices colliding in a wild symphony that twisted at the edges of reality. Panicking, I fought against the pull, backpedaling toward the entrance with newfound resolve, but for every step I took, figures erupted from the wall, specters of the lost in a collage of agony and joy, their tortured faces melded with grotesque grins that cut through the darkness like knives. Shadows stretched, elongating, as motionless horrors edged closer. "Embrace us!" they cried, echoes of yesteryears mingled with the chants of desolation. Suddenly, the sigil from before flared to life in the corner of my vis Iona, pulsing beacon amidst the chaos, a final shred of hope glowing like a distant star in a desolate sky. Shaking with desperation, I surged toward it, willing the very essence of my being to break free from the tight bounds of despair. But just as the sigil shone brilliantly, one of the shadowed figures lunged at me, its mouth unhinging impossibly wide as if to consume my very soul. I felt the darkness seeping into my bones as I collided with the sigil. And then the world erupted, light exploded like fireworks born of agony and euphoria, but before I could grasp its full potential, a piercing scream of fury erupted from the abyss. You cannot escape, I was hurled backward, grasping desperately for anything, but I felt the floor slip away beneath me as the chamber quaked violently, swallowing me into the tightening maw of darkness. In the last fleeting moment before everything dissolved into the void, I glimpsed Sarah, her face an agonized mask twisted in mockery against the flickering flames of despair. You will never be free. We will always find you. And with that, as the everything beyond my comprehension collapsed, I plummeted into a spiral of shadows, unraveling like shards of glass, utterly alone, the looming darkness pulling me back into its relentless embrace, leaving behind the only light I had ever known. Just before the darkness whispered to me again, "Join us." I awoke in a haze, the thick air swirling around me like a tempest of sorrow and dread. My surroundings had shifted again, thrusting me into a chamber more constricted than the last, the walls damp and pulsating as if alive. An incessant low hum vibrated through the stone, an unsettling melody that began to synchronize with the pounding of my heart. I lay on a cold, uneven floor, my body aching from the fall, yet the pain was eclipsed by a numbing terror that settled deep in my bones. Straining to comprehend my situation, I raised myself shakily to my feet. The light flickering above me glowed weakly, revealing moments of shadowy figures lurking just beyond its reach. A chill spread through the room, sending waves of anxiety crashing over me, as whispers tangled themselves around my consciousness, threading through the labyrinth of fear that had become my reality. "Help us," a voice teased, mellifluous yet twisted. It came from somewhere to my right, echoing, reverberating off the walls. Goosebumps prickled my skin, and I turned, seeking the source of the disembodied plea. My mind raced, wrangling with the thought that this moment was more than just my exposure to a hidden realm of despair. It felt personal, predatory, that I hesitated, knowing enough to be wary of voices in the shadows. Those who called upon the lost rarely wished to offer salvation. Yet, the tugging at my heart compelled me forward, the longing for connection, for belonging gnawed at me, a desperate hunger to fill the void that had opened between me and everything I once knew. Forward I stumbled, deeper into the suffocating darkness where filaments of light flickered intermittently, illuminating more grotesque murals that morphed and shifted, a ghastly series of feasts where hungering mouths spilled over with grinning faces, laughter freezing in the cold dread of oppression. The more I looked, the more I saw, faces I recognized from the past warped into laughter and glee before contorting back into anguish and pain. A sudden draft sliced through the air, curling around me like icy fingers. I strained to breathe as the whispers intensified, an unnerving chorus swelling as unseen figures encircled me, their voices merging into a symphony of grotesque cheer. "Don't you see? Freedom awaits." They sang in perfect unison, the cadence cruelly mocking as they beckoned me closer. "Get away!" I cried out, but my voice was lost amid the cacophony that splintered through the chamber. Each word twisted like thorns, digging deeper into my mind. "We can guide you. Embrace your fate, let go of the light." Their melodic insistence wrapped around my throat, tightening like a noose. In the very corners of perception, I sensed them, shadowed figures darting from one side to the other, lurking barely beyond the threshold of vision. For every wretched tangle of deceit they uttered, the chamber itself seemed to respond, shuddering as if in excitement. A terrible anticipation pulsed through the stone, and underneath it all, a deep fear bubbled like a frothing cauldron, ready to erupt. That I fought to breathe, a cold sweat slicking my skin as spectral hands reached out, grazing my shoulder. The touch was both electric and decaying, a reminder of humanity that had become grotesque. "We can make you one of us," sang the voices, and then, from their depths, a figure stepped forward, tall, twisted. I recognized her instantly, but her face was forever marred by the shadows lurking behind her, transforming her into a haunting specter of my memory. "Sarah?" I stammered, hope igniting for one terrifying moment. "Is that you?" But even as the hope sparked, the dissonance washed over me. Her eyes glowed with a fierce light, a depth filled with longing and malevolence. She smiled, but it was a mockery of familiarity, a parody of all that was still left weaving in the tapestry of my soul. "Join us," she whispered, voice draped in warmth that soon turned to ice. "Here, there is no pain. You will never be alone." With every syllable, sadness unfurled around me, swallowing the glittering remains of my spirit. Clenching my fists tight against the encroaching knot of fear, I backed away, but the shadows surged forward, their fervent pleas rippling through the air, tilting the marrow of certainty I had left. I searched for an escape, any route that would pull me away from this sickening moment, but each choice only led deeper into nightmarish chaos. Then suddenly, the ground beneath me trembled again as if awakening groans resonating through the walls, and within that vibration, I caught sight of movement far behind Sarah. A darkness thicker than any shadow and entity, vast and ravenous, writhed against the stone like an insatiable beast. Skulls and faces projected through its mass, merging into an echoing roar of torment that reverberated through my very core. It called for everything I feared, it wanted to consume me whole. That I felt a savage instinct ignite within, urging me to run against the tides of despair. I turned on my heel and sprinted, the shrill cacophony of laughter chasing after me, each note laced with a venomous joy that gnawed at my sanity. Shadows soared past me, their limbs reaching out in desperation, grasping for my essence with growing hunger, but just as I neared what I hoped was an exit, a voice boomed overhead, crashing against the walls like thunder. "You will never escape, light-bearer." The very chamber trembled, the laughter crescendoing into a wild tempest. The portal I'd glimpsed dissipated like mist, leaving only the void behind, and I was ensnared once more within the thrall of the darkness. Sarah's presence drawing nearer, a predatory hunger igniting the emptiness in her gaze. I could almost feel the tendrils of despair wrapping around my throat, squeezing tighter as shadows engulfed me. Just as I thought despair had won, my foot stumbled against something solid, a glimmer of silver amidst the shadows. A weapon, perhaps? Or a key? I reached down instinctively, feeling the chill of metal as the room fell silent, the disembodied laughter replaced by an ominous stillness. But then, the murmur returned much deeper, more sinister. "You should have let go. Now you'll join us." Forever trapped in our nightmare, I grasped the object tighter, feeling the weight of everything delicate settle into my palm as I rose, prepared to face the foreboding presence. But before I had the chance to turn, Sarah's voice coiled around me again, her words slicing through the air like knives. "It's too late to choose, my love. You are already ours." As the shadows lunged forth to claim me, the silver glinted ominously in my hand, but I had no time to consider its power. The abyss beckoned, and I stood on the precipice of absolute darkness, knowing that the real terror was about to unfold. I can't say how long I lingered in that void, a haze of despair and terror swirling around me. Struggling through the thick blackness, I finally stumbled into a fragment of reality that felt tangible, solid, a realm that promised escape. My heart raced, the taste of adrenaline bitter on my tongue as I grasped the silver object tighter, desperate for something to defeat the encroaching madness. But, as I drew in a breath, the air vibrated with sinister whispers, curling around my thoughts like serpents. "You have chosen poorly," it hissed, its voice dripping with malevolence. The shadows danced at the periphery, teasing me with glimpses of what wait an endless tapestry of victims lost in ceaseless revelry. I could hear their laughter, joyous and cruel, twisting together in a maddening spiral that clawed at my mind. In my desperation, I flicked the silver object before me, and the light reflected dimly against the pervading darkness, illuminating symbols etched into its surface, mirroring the sigil from my memories. "Why won't you join us?" came the voices of lost souls, an echoing plea wrapped in mocking jests, growing louder, reverberating through my despair. "Embrace the banquet. Embrace your destiny." I shook my head violently, resisting their pull, the memory of Sarah's twisted face haunting me like a specter, her laughter now a taunt echoing in the abyss of my heart. Suddenly, an idea ignited in the recesses of my mind. If the sigil could bind me, perhaps this silver could release me. Thrusting the object forward, I focused on the desperate need for freedom, feeling it vibrate in response as shadows coiled around me like a tightening noose. "Leave, while you can," I shouted to the murky figures that crawled closer, yearning for my essence, my strength. "You don't own me." My voice trembled, but resolve surged within me, confronting the darkness that sought to consume my existence. As if responding to my defiance, the shadows hissed, retreating momentarily while intensifying in fury. Flesh to the feast. Darkness shall reign. I gripped the silver tighter, summoned the flickering memories of light and hope, Sarah's face beautiful, innocent before darkness held her captive. Clenching my teeth, I cried out the words once more, the echoes murmuring through the abyss as I activated the power coiled within. "Release us," I shouted, fully aware of the burden I carried, the souls bound to the darkness and my need to escape. The silver glowed brilliantly, casting an intense light that shattered the shadows around me, revealing fleeting glimpses of faces trapped in anguish, hellish banquets filled with the cries of the lost. "Retreat! Flee!" They screamed, their unholy laughter now a cacophony of wails that fueled the darkness into an insatiable storm. I could see now, with clarity. Haunted faces extended their hands toward me, reaching through the veil of despair, and yet, every moment my heart galloped with dread as shadows lunged forth, grasping frantically, filled with malign intent, as if they aimed to pull me back into their dark embrace. In that critical moment, I knew I had to choose, not just for my freedom, but for those entrapped within the shadows that anguished, yet glimmered with dormant hope. With a roar that echoed through the caverns of my reality, I plunged the silver through the swirling darkness toward the sigil's past form, calling upon the power contained within. "Release them! Release us all!" The burst of light erupted beyond comprehension, a shockwave that sent shadows spiraling in defiance, reverberating with the anguish of countless souls who had cried out, who had suffered. But as the shadows resisted, fighting against my push, a chilling realization clawed its way into my mind. The laughter stirred again amidst the flurry, a melodic taunt intertwined with the pleas of the damned. No. I screamed as the silver indeed clanged against unforgiving stone, reflecting back into my own eyes, the hollow faces merging into one horrific mask of a creature feasting on fear. It came into shape, looming over me, a faceless void, draping shadows like an infinite cloak. Despair tugged at my heart as I saw them, the faces of the lost again emerging in grotesque harmony, their tortured joy twisted into fury and hunger. I felt their warm grasp turn cold around me, suffocating, closing in like fog that pressed against my nostrils, filling my lungs with dread, and I knew with undeniable certainty, by tearing them free, I would unleash the true horror. Their freedom would come at a cost. The banquet would hunger not just for my essence but for my very soul as well. I had summoned this darkness, drawn it closer with every thought of hope and joy that had resonated through my life. To battle it required me to sacrifice what remained. "You will join us, you cannot escape this fate," they bellowed, laughter merging with the howling, blaring through the chamber like sirens beckoning, infinite and unyielding. "This is it," I gasped, fighting my own inevitability, a final stand against despair. "I choose to break the cycle." With fury coursing through my veins, a blinding light exploded from the silver in my grasp, piercing the faceless void, turning shadows into mere wisps of smoke that roared in outrage. It was then the moment stretched to what felt like infinity, trembling, crumbling as if the universe itself had snapped, but in that moment of clarity, 100 voices surged, gathering spectral energy that coalesced into a single chant. "One of us! One of us!" There, amidst the swirling chaos, I glimpsed a singular face, the child's, wide-eyed and shimmering, urging me to stay. My heart quaked. I had to resist. I wouldn't be lost to this banquet of torment. In that severed instant, I felt nothing. My body, my existence began to dissolve, unraveling into the very shadows that now trembled with restless anticipation. The blinding brilliance imploded, overwhelming the darkness as it consumed all I held dear, sending the fragments of despair clamoring against my vanishing essence. I screamed, defiance echoing through the void, clinging to the fleeting memory of love and light, but even as I felt everything slip through my fingers like shards of glass, the laughter transformed into a coda singular echo, haunting and ethereal, as the chamber clawed at reality, twisting into oblivion. "Join us forever, and before the world collapsed around me, I closed my eyes, whispering a promise even in the depths of despair, I would find a way to break the cycle again. As the darkness consumed me whole, reality shifted one final time, dispersed among the faceless voids, forever chasing a light that would elude me until the end of time. And in that abyss, a chilling echo resounded, a haunting call that would reverberate eternally through the shadows. Not everything is as it seems, we will always be waiting.